got a feeling, a great feeling from Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey in the morning makes me feel alive. Woke me up this morning, now I'm up and on my way. Oh, 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 yeah, what a great way to start your day, the Lakey way.
That's me, right? Welcome to the program, The Lakey Way. That's me, Jimmy Lakey, Jaime Lagos. They call me south of the border. I don't use that name usually when I'm around ICE agents because I don't want to get any ideas that I'm not 100% legal. But nevertheless, good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here on this glorious day the Lord has made. It is Thursday, almost Friday, not quite Friday, but we'll treat it like a Friday because why the heck not? It's Thursday, the 8th day of January, 2026, the year of our Lord. Pleasure to be here, happy to be here, and I hope you feel exactly the same way about being here with me. All right, well, Minneapolis is on edge. Minnesota not going to get a break here. You go back to the days of George Floyd riots, which were about 5 years ago. Then you go back to the corruption under Timmy Waltz, and then you look at what's happening and protesters chasing ICE and the shooting that happened. Is there anything? What the hell happened to Minneapolis? What happened to Minnesota? If you're watching in Minnesota, I'd love to hear from you because if you couldn't get you're just all sorts of bad news. I don't think there's been a good news story coming out of Minnesota in a heck of a long time. At least nothing that has captivated America's attention. So you know who I think is suffering? You start hearing about these stories about Minneapolis and Minnesota, and you start hearing this corruption. You hear about these politicians. You meet Timmy Waltz, and you say, why the hell would I ever want to live there and or go there? And I'm guessing summer tourism in Minnesota is probably a big deal. Everybody wants to go to the lake, but I'm guessing this is not good for the image of Minnesota. Any of you that have grown up or from Minnesota, I'd love to get your take on all the things that we're watching there and what has happened to your state. You can look at the great state of Colorado, where I'm at, and also say, what happened to the state of Colorado? How did it go so crazy? I'm sure you were thinking that if you were out of state back in the days when we learned that the Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gangs were infesting this state with the kind of a nod of the head by Jared Polis, our governor. So there's a lot of different states that you kind of look at and go, what happened to that state? Maybe that's not a safe place I want to go visit. Maybe that's not the place I would like to relocate to. But man, you go back 4 or 5 years now, Minneapolis especially has really just been a string of PR disasters. And I just find it quite interesting. The Travel Minnesota Chamber of Commerce division has to be sweating right now going, yep, this is not good. Not good at all. We got another riot about to break out in the streets. Anybody see the video? If you saw the video, I watched it, and the person, by the lady, the woman that was killed, evidently was listed as a poet from Colorado. So I don't know what her ties here were and how she got there. I'm not really sure. But I saw a statement, I guess, from a mother, grieving mother, learning news of a death like this. Any death is tragic. And she says she would never have been protesting. She was probably just scared. Well, then the story comes out in eyewitness testimonies, even protesters saying, no, she was the lead car in the protest. They were chasing ICE around, following ICE all day. And even one of the protesters was on camera saying, no, she was there to block it. They were actually trying to leave that area, and she was blocking it, but they had gotten stuck in the snow. And so this person had been a harassment to ICE all day long. And, first of all, if law enforcement is doing something, I don't care if it's down the block in my office or down the block of the street at the house or down the office from the school, it doesn't matter. If there's a law enforcement activity, you don't get right in the middle of it. You kind of stand back. Maybe you're curious, whatever. But finding herself there, and anytime you hear law enforcement, whether you like them or not, or whether you agree with them or think they have rights to or not, I would not suggest when they say stop, halt, in the name of the law, I would not suggest trying to run through the barricade. Not going to end well for you or those in the car with you. So anyway, give me your thoughts on the Minneapolis thing. I have kind of this theory that really, when you have an issue like this, what I would consider a 90-10 issue, 80-20 at least issue, where people say, illegal shouldn't be here. If you came here illegally, especially if you're the worst of the worst, especially if you're one of the bad hombres out there, you shouldn't be here. You should get sent back. And somehow Democrats always manage to turn this into, we're the victims. Look at us. We're just victims standing up for people. And they always need a good riot, too. The riot always agitates that base there. If you can get a good riot out of a Democrat, they love to riot. Remember the Occupy Wall Street? You had the George Floyd riots. Now you've got these people teetering on violence in Minneapolis. The thing that may save Minneapolis, this one, is it's freaking cold right now. And it's a real awful situation, a tragedy that did not have to be there. And one of the things that gets exacerbated is, like we talked about, the attempted assassinations of President Trump that happened twice, and some of the political violence, the murder of Charlie Kirk, all of these things. When you as a politician, whether you're Timmy Waltz at Jazz Hands, or no matter who you are, when you as a politician walk around and scream that that person's a Nazi, that person's a jackbooted thug, then these people that are mentally deranged, mentally ill, mentally off balance, they think they have no other choice except to save the world and save democracy and go cause problems. And unfortunately, it's the programming and the constant dripping of negativity and propaganda and indoctrination that got this woman killed. So, people say ICE has blood on their hands. No, every person that woman, God rest her soul, ever heard say that this is Nazis, these are Nazis, these are the Gestapo going door to door. That's what Tim Waltz has said. He caused her to be in a frenzy like that, and he has blood on his hands. So I stand with ICE. I watch the videos, and a lot of professionals out there say that this lady, the ICE agents, I'll read some of the news stories that are out there, then I'll go through the lineup of our guest. They will say, some people say, law enforcement, I'm finding the story in front of me. They're going to say the agents acted okay. This was a fully justified activity. And again, if you're in the middle of a legal operation and you're pulling your car in the middle of it, probably not going to end well for you. Kristi Noem has alleged the woman was stalking and impeding agents all day. Agents who have reviewed it on television, and analysts say, justifiable. She lurched the car forward. She should learn how to put it in park. And she didn't just lurch it forward. She accelerated to get the heck out of there, and not going to end well. All right, a great lineup of guests here in just a moment. We're scheduled to be joined, if you may have seen the show on Newsmax, the Newsmax network. Chris Salcedo is supposed to be with us here in just a bit. Josh McConkey is going to be on the program, back with us again. And also our old buddy Jay Ratliff, aviation and travel expert. He joins us for the very first time this year for our traditional Thursday visit. But we had Thursday was New Year's Day, and then Thursday was Christmas Day, and now Jay Ratliff is back with us today. And that, my friends, is a gift of itself to have Jay on the program. So don't go anywhere. I've got a question for you that we will call it our question of the day. Yeah, we'll talk more about Minneapolis. We'll talk more about ICE. We've got the House has issued a report. About a year ago, those Palisade fires were burning in California, and all the celebrity types got out there and they did a big Hollywood aid, like, Farm Aid, Band-Aid. They all sang songs, and it was for the fire aid. Well, the House has issued a report that most of that money that people were donating to fire aid for the poor people of the Palisades, and God, sad what happened there, most people were not giving to, they thought the very little money in comparison actually went to the victims of the fire. Some of it went to voter registration, some of it went to environmental groups, NGOs, nonprofits, and very few money of that dollars went to the actual victims of the Palisade fire. So if you were one, they got duped and suckered by the singers up on the stage last year going, help us support the Palisade fires. You got duped. You need your money back. I'm probably not going to get it, but you got duped. The House of Representatives have issued a report on the fraudulent, I call it fraudulent fundraising that happened, and at least the proclamation of where that money might actually go and where it was going to end up at. So we will talk about that in due course. I have a question. Anybody remember the 1990s? For some of you, that was some of you were old then, and some of you are old now. So you've been old forever, and you're in heaven's waiting room. Love you. Now, others of you, that's probably when you would the prime of your life. A lot of you still had metabolism back in the 90s. A lot of you still had hair back in the 90s. Some who were maybe finishing high school in the 90s, those late Gen Xers. Maybe you were going to college in the 90s. Some of you got married in the 90s. I mean, for a lot of folks out there that are kind of in their, let's say, their mid ages now, the 90s were kind of the prime of life. You were a machine there. You show your kids or your grandkids the photo of you in the 90s, and they're like, that's not you. That's not you. I had hair. I had metabolism then. The 90s were good for a lot of folks. Very, very good for a lot of folks. But there's some things that happened and we lived through in the 90s that were considered socially acceptable, but now you're like, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. I remember growing up as a child, and this would happen in the 90s. It still went on until the days of real obsession with cell phones. It was nothing for one of the neighbor ladies or somebody to come knock on the door, ring the bell, and kind of drop in unexpectedly for some coffee or tea with my mother at this kitchen table. I remember this, and it used to be that your friends would just come knock on your door and say, can Jimmy come out and play? Hey, is Jimmy out? And you just knocked on someone's door, and it was unannounced. Well, now that's frowned upon. So our question of the day, yeah, we'll get back to the shootings in the shooting in Minneapolis. We'll get back to Minnesota, the ICE operations. But my question of the day for you, my friends, is what are some things that were socially acceptable back in the 1990s that you're like, yeah, that's not socially acceptable. I'll get the ball rolling with knocking on someone's door unexpectedly is not something that we do now. Another one is not knowing where your kids were. In the 90s, in the 80s, our parents did not know where we were at. Matter of fact, there was a television ad that went on, a PSA that played across America at about 10 o'clock at night. It says, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Well, that's unacceptable now. If somebody says you know where your kids are, you pull up the Life 360 app, the iPhone tracker, and you know exactly where they're at. Yeah, they're down the street. But it's socially unacceptable now to not know where your kids are. Well, back then, the 90s, and even before, it was socially acceptable to, I don't know where they're at. They're riding their bike. They'll be home. The street lights come on. Let me give you one more, and then you guys jump in here. Ready? Question of the day. Yeah, we got a lot of news to talk about. Question of the day: smoking in a restaurant. Even the fast food, the Burger King, the McDonald's had those little metal ashtrays on the table. Up into the 90s, it was really the late 90s before the non-smoking craze stopped and indoor smoking was banned altogether in many, many places. So those are some things that were socially acceptable in the 90s, but not acceptable now. You jump into the fray, and if you don't know how to do that on the Lakey Unleashed Streamcast, podcast, and broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, what you do is you comment, whether you're on one of the Facebook feeds or the Twitter feeds or the X feeds or the Rumble feeds and the various platforms we're on, streaming live. You just comment, and most of those will show up right here on our screen. All right, as I said, it's a glorious day the Lord has made. Glad to have you here. Lots of news to get to. Jay Ratliff returns for his weekly segment. We've the last couple of weeks have not been with Jay because of the holiday season. Jay Ratliff, our aviation and travel expert. We got a lot of news to get to, and I want to welcome in our first guest of the morning. If you're new to the show, pleasure to have you here. Our very first guest of the day. Got to find the buttons here. His name's Chris Salcedo. You probably have seen him and or heard him on the Newsmax channel. If you're in the Dallas area, I know you can have heard his show before on the WBAP, one of my favorite stations when I'm in the Dallas. Did a fill-in gig there one time. They never invited me back. Chris Salcedo has also written a new book called The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution. Please welcome into the program, Chris Salcedo. Chris, welcome to the show, sir.
Jimmy, nice to meet you. Look, and you know what? It was WBAP's error not inviting you back. I can already tell that. And that's why probably one of the reasons why I no longer am employed there. I left a couple of years ago on KSEV in Houston, got the Salcedo Storm podcast, Newsmax, and I do a lot of the streaming that you're doing too. So anyway,
very good.
You know, we passed up on a big opportunity I'm sensing with you at WB. Probably the reason why I'm no longer part of that operation.
They kick the good ones to the curb, Chris. That's what they do.
Right?
That's
what I'm saying.
Kick us right out. We got a lot of news, and I know you talk about the news all the time. Doing what I do is we do. We know how we just obsess over these stories. First of all, though, let's talk about the book. I always sometimes the book gets shoved to the very end of an interview. You're like, well, I would like to talk about my book, so let's talk about it. It's called "The Rise of Liberty-Loving Latino: New American Revolution." Yeah.
Okay. Well, the premise of the book, first off, liberty-loving Latino. That's my moniker. That's who I am. So I made it, and that's why I'm so grateful to be invited on shows like yours, because it's a very personal thing for me. It was a culmination of the starting of the Chris Salcedo show when I got out of news and got into opinion, and I love alliteration. So anybody that would feature this book, we put it in the context of the rise of the liberty-loving Latino as the rise of President Trump, culminating in the most unlikely of political comebacks. What happened in 2024 as a record number, and it doesn't even do it justice to call it a record number, because what you witnessed with the Latinos leaving the Democrat Party and switching over to not Republican, they switched over to America First, and there's a big distinction between those two. When they switched over to America First, it was the biggest political earthquake to hit this country since the formation of the Republican Party itself. So that's why I call it a new American revolution, because remember the dark days of World War II. The Axis powers had a leg up on all the allies. Then America entered the war and changed the whole complexion. What folks out there of all races, colors, creeds, whatever, need to understand is that millions of liberty-loving Latinos have just joined the fight to keep America free and prosperous and moving forward, and courtesy of the last election. Record number of males, 48% total Latinos, a majority of male Latinos voted for President Trump. Never seen before. Republicans had never come close before.
Give the analysis as to why now. What was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was it that turned voting bloc that if they were in politics, they were traditionally counted as Democrat votes? What was it that snapped and caused this really revolution?
It was a culmination of things, man. And let me ask you, how much do you know about the Spanish language? Have you ever taken like first year Spanish or something like that? Yeah. So there are feminine words in Spanish and there are masculine words in Spanish. The feminines end in A, the masculine ends in O. Well, here came the Democrats, the Latinos, saying, hey, we're going to need you to change that, because of our cultural Marxist LGBTQ ABCDEFG cultural Marxist agenda. We're going to ask you to call yourselves Latin X. And I mean, I don't care if you were a left-wing progressive Latino or you were a conservative liberty-loving Latino like me. You said, what now? You want me to do what now? And then the Democrats said, hey, little Susie can be little Johnny and little Johnny can be little Susie. And the Latino said, what? And then the Democrats said, not only can men have babies, which, abuelas all over the country said, what is this? They also said the best woman for the job in sports was a man. And Latinos said, you people in the Democrat Party are bat guano crazy. So let's look over at what's going on the Republican side. Well, thank God it wasn't Mitch McConnell representing Republicans. Thank God it wasn't Paul Ryan. It was President Trump. President Trump being there gave Latinos a place to go as an alternative to the Democrat Party that is full of crooks, criminals, and deviants. And thank God he was there. And that's a lesson for all Republicans out there to take away as well.
The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino is the name of the new book, New American Revolution by Chris Salcedo. And, of course, his show on Daily on Newsmax as well. Chris, the world that we live in, obviously we have an ICE operation that has been news that happened yesterday in Minneapolis, and tragically a woman lost her life. I think it was justified from what I can see. We'll let the investigators sort it out. But it was these deportations that a lot of folks said, oh, we got if we go after the illegals, we're going to lose the Hispanic vote. It seems as if that message of law and order and deportation and these people came here illegally, that didn't scare the Latino community. As a matter of fact, that was very front and center in Donald Trump's both of his campaigns.
It was. And, I think we ought to examine when a socialist and a Marxist, whether they be in the biased press or in the Democrat Party, when they say, hey, if you enforce the law, you're going to be alienating Latinos. If you don't embrace criminals, then you're going to be alienating Latinos. What are the Democrats really saying? Aren't they saying that Latinos, all of us, support law breaking? Aren't they saying that if you're illegal, you're Latino? So isn't that racist? Yes. Yes, it is. It is racist. And the idea that Democrats will, with a straight face, say, hey, all these Latinos, they love illegal immigration. They love breaking the law. Racism. That's the Democrat Socialist Party, folks. And about this shooting, man, I looked at it, and I blame another death on irresponsible Democrat rhetoric. You got Jacob Fry, the Minneapolis mayor, out there saying he wants ICE, the blank out of Minneapolis. You've got the governor, Tim Awals of Minnesota, saying that he is at war with the U.S. government. He's at war. And when all these left-wing kooks in the streets start acting on that irresponsible rhetoric, it ends up, and this is why I find all of you Democrats out there so contemptible, because you elected Democrats will send all of these people out there half-cocked with no information, ginning them up by claiming that ICE is somehow the new Gestapo for simply enforcing immigration law, which is their job, for crying out loud. And you send these people out to use their vehicles as weapons to target ICE agents. Some of you people on the left are shooting at our ICE agents. It's illegal for you to do these things. These agents are doing their job, and they have the right to go home to their families as well. And I blame the elected Democrats for ginning up. Well, I'm sorry. What Tim Awals is saying is an insurrection. He is saying, and he's talking about activating the National Guard, man.
Yeah.
What are the orders going to be? Shoot ICE agents?
Yeah, it's unbelievable, the incompetence that we've known that Tim Walz was, but then you have this corruption scandal that's been going on with the Somali pirates up there, and now you see the incompetence of the administration of the city and of the state. You see all this stuff. And it's almost as if, is this Tim Walz, the mayor of Minneapolis, going, okay, they're looking at our corruption too much. Let's see if we can become victims here. Let's see if we can get the story off of us. The spotlight is too much on our corruption scandal.
But by the way, I'm ripping off Somali pirates. I'm totally stealing that. But yet you're absolutely right. They're trying to, that's why they're saying all these outrageous things. They want to keep the focus off of what they're doing. And by the way, as every layer of the onion is peeled away, the brazenness, every American taxpayer, even those who watch The View and CNN and MSNBS, even they are getting outraged at the in-your-face raping of the U.S. taxpayers, courtesy of the Democrat Party. Yeah, you can blame the Somali pirates; they're criminals, absolutely. But let's also examine the Democrat Party that relaxed all of the guardrails that protected us Americans and taxpayers. Let's examine these systems the Democrats have put up to facilitate massive, and we're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars, not only funding illegal activity, but funding terrorists, according to reports. It's unconscionable, man. And everybody within the sound of my voice should be seeing what's going on. What the Democrats were willing to do to you in your pocketbook to facilitate illegal activity. It's a disgrace.
Yeah. If you're listening later on the podcast version of the show, iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening, the voice you're hearing is Chris Salcedo. Of course, if you're watching on the stream live or later, you see it on the screen. It's Chris Salcedo. He's the Newsmax host. Maybe you see him every day there. Also hosts the Salcedo Storm podcast, and he's written a new book called The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, a New American Revolution. So if you're just hearing it, just want to remind you who you're hearing. Chris Salcedo, the name of the new book is called The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino. Latino and new American revolution. Chris, we've live in volatile times. We have people that Timmy Waltz, the mayor of Minneapolis, they're literally on the verge of insurrection, calling for civil war and civil unrest by just their actions. Where do we go from here as this country? Are these people so mentally ill and deranged by the orange man that the Trump derangement syndrome literally has us locked into this frenzy forever, or is there a way forward?
Europe has fallen, right? Because of the leftists have taken over. The Democrat Party has fallen. The Democrat Party is anti-American. I have said this. I don't know if you caught this. Chuck Toomer. And the reason why we call him Chuck Toomer is because he's a big fan of Obamacare, the cancer of Obamacare. So we call him Chuck Toomer. Senator Chuck Toomer was on CBS Fake News over the weekend. Or no, actually, it was with Snuffleupagus. It was ABC Fake News. He was with George Snuffleupagus. And you may not have caught this because Snuffleupagus says, hey, Rubio says that what we're doing with Maduro was completely lawful and constitutional. And he says, and that we had the right to do this. And he says, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. And George Snuffleupagus said the United States has the right to do this. And Chuck Toomer says they, as America is somebody else that he's not a part of. He says America is not allowed to do that. It is my firm belief the Democrat Party no longer wishes to be American. They seek to shred the Constitution. So the way forward, I think it's right now, it's in the Republicans' court. And as you saw with the passing of the big, beautiful bill, the Republicans looked us in the eye and said, the price of getting the good stuff that Trump wants is to fund all of the Democrats' corruption and fraud. Yep. That the Republican Party, folks, listen to me, the Republican Party fully funded all of Tim Awal's, all of Governor Gavin Newsom's corruption and fraud. And guys like Don Bacon and guys like Mike Lawler and Lisa Murkowski and others said with a straight face, oh, we got to do that to get to Donald Trump's good stuff in the big, beautiful bill. Yep. Right? I believe, and this is my firm belief, that we can no longer accept Democrat fraud and corruption as the price of doing business in Washington. What I want the Republican Party to do, and this is where answering your question, how do we go forward? We must go forward to a party, and I call them the America First Coalition, separate from the Republicans. If the America First Coalition takes over the Republican Party and says that these people, these leftists who have already lost, they're already gone, they should no longer ever have power over me and mine or you and yours ever again. And they've got to be punished for what they've done to us. That's the only way forward. If the Republicans want to win, good policy makes good politics. They have got to start with that mindset. Do not surrender us again to Democrats.
The voice of Chris Salcedo. Chris, the book is The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, the New American Revolution. Of course, your daily show on Newsmax. If folks haven't watched it on the Newsmax TV channel, they should. And also the Salcedo Storm podcast. Folks want to follow you, obviously get a book anywhere great books are sold, Amazon, etc. If folks want to follow you, listen to your work, where do they find you? ChrisSalcedo.com, ChrisSalcedo.com. And remember, every time somebody buys a book, an angel gets his or her wings. So do your part, folks. Do your part. Do your part. Go buy a copy. Now, for folks who want to read it, people say, I'm not Latino. Should I read the book? Who's the audience here?
Absolutely. And then that was one of the first comments I made. Remember, folks, this is why it's important to you. You're in a battle to save your country, whether you're white, black, brown, doesn't really matter. You're in a battle to save your country, to save prosperity, save free enterprise, and save freedom. You just got joined by millions of liberty-loving Latinos who joined the fight. That is a book for everybody. Not only do we detail what happened, we detail how we can keep the America First march going.
Chris Salcedo, it's a pleasure, my friend, to meet you, and look forward to talking again in the future, sir.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris Salcedo. Again, you saw his website there. I'll give the name of the book again if you're listening. It's a long one, but it's called The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, a New American Revolution, available anywhere fine books are sold. If they don't sell that book, they don't sell fine books. They're pieces of crap books. So go to the places that sell the fine books. All right, good morning. Glad to have you here on the program. It's a Thursday edition. If you're listening on the podcast later in the day, thousands of earballs will hear the show. Thank you. We're glad you found us on the iHeart. We're glad you found us on the Spotify. We're glad you found us on the Podbean, wherever you're listening. If you're watching the show live, several different platforms stream this thing live. Different pages stream it. Welcome in. Glad to have you unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. Now we do the Lakey Unleashed, and glad to be here with you and glad to have you tune in. Don't forget, you can comment in all the forums. Looks like the comments are very active this morning, and we put some of them on the screen. Like if you're on Facebook, you don't see what's happening. YouTube, but we try to put as many of these up as possible if they add to the conversation. So feel free to jump into conversation anytime you want. I do have a question for you. It's a question of the day. It's a fun question of the day. There's a Reddit forum out there that's basically saying how the 90s have changed. Now, some of you peaked in the 90s. Some of you some of you had metabolism and hair, as I said, in the 90s. Some of you weren't so fat. The 90s have changed a lot. It seems like yesterday, but it's a long time ago. Matter of fact, people that are middle-aged and heading towards retirement were probably very well alive in the 90s. So let me ask you this question. What are some things that were absolutely socially acceptable in the 90s that are not socially acceptable now? Now, there's a lot of things that are socially acceptable now that would not be socially acceptable in the 90s, being a keyboard warrior and profanities and personal insults. And that would not be socially acceptable. Now it is because of the internet and YouTube warriors and Facebook warriors out there that have nothing else to do with it with their lives. But we're going the other way. What was socially acceptable in the 90s but not acceptable today? Here's one. Some of you are putting some in. I mentioned smoking in a restaurant. Even the fast food restaurants had a smoking section. Anybody remember the little gold aluminum or tin or whatever ashtrays they had at McDonald's? Every bar smelled like an ashtray. You could walk in and say, yep, that's a smoking place. I remember I was in college, out of college. I remember living in Colorado when I was graduated from college and getting into radio. I remember walking into places in Colorado where I had to choose smoking or non-smoking sections. So a lot of you remember that. That's not acceptable socially anymore. What say you? Knocking on someone's door unannounced and just showing up and say, hey, how you doing? Came over to have a visit. You don't do that today. That's not considered socially acceptable. So there's your question of the day. What are some of the things that were acceptable in the 90s but not acceptable now? Helping your neighbor shovel snow or yard work, selling lemonade in front of your home. That still happens in my neighborhood. This past summer, we had some kids out with a lemonade stand, and the girls were working the stand. The boys were hassling the girls, but when I pulled up, the boys were like car hops, and I'm, okay, buy lemonade. And then I said, well, I don't have any change, just keep it. And they thought they thought the $5 was or $10, and I said, just keep it. Thank you for working. So give me some things that you say were acceptable, but they're not acceptable, aren't acceptable anymore. Anybody remember? I think I saw this post up there, and it might have already gone to the screen. I remember my mom was baking something or doing something, and she didn't have it, a cup of flour or some sugar. She would send, Jimmy, come here. And I'd have to go, yes, mommy, what I do? And she said, go next door and see if I can borrow a cup of flour. Go next door and see if I can borrow a cup of sugar. Go next door and see if I can borrow whatever. Do people still do that? I see that. I saw that on the. I see the column. It's probably already been on the screen. Stacy said that on the Facebook feeds. Yeah, that's something that I guess I think my neighbors would freak the heck out if I stopped by today and said, "Hi, excuse me, can I borrow a cup of sugar?" I think they would just not know exactly what to do with that. So some things that were that were very good. Serving your country was appreciated. Well, Jason, a lot of us, we still appreciate those who serve our country. I get what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying. Indeed, I do. All right, so give me some more of these things that were socially acceptable then, but are not acceptable now. Remember babysitters? I don't know how you remember your babysitter when you were needed a babysitter, or maybe you were the babysitter and you look back going, I was 10 years old. And the parents would go out for the night or go to a movie or go to the PTA, and the 10-year-old, usually a little girl, but maybe a little boy, would come over and babysit. And sometimes one of them would be a newborn, some of them would be multiple kids at one time, and your babysitter was 12. Now, when you're 6, that 12-year-old still looks big, but now looking when you got 12, you're like, I was left in charge of 2 kids and a newborn, and parents did that. Now they would probably call Child Protective Services if you did that. What's another one? That leaving your kids in the car when you went grocery shopping if the weather was good. So now, even if the weather's good, you don't leave your kids in the car. You got to strap them in the basket and get them in there. Hold my hand and let's get in there. But yeah, I remember many times my mom would go into the store and I'm just running in for some eggs. I'm just running in for this. You stay here. And as I got older, I could get her to leave the keys in the car so I could listen to the radio. But early on, you just roll the window down. You'll be fine. I'll be back in a few minutes. Just going to run in here. So what was kosher and or socially acceptable in the 90s that is not socially acceptable now? That is your question of the day. Talk amongst yourselves. Love to hear from you. All right. I got another little story I want to get to, and I find this quite interesting. You know, I try to find some stories that we ought to be able to get along on, but unfortunately, somebody's going to say, this is Trump's fault. This has somehow become partisan, and it's not partisan at all. Anybody remember about a year ago, the Palisade fires were happening in California, and very few, there's 40,000 homes destroyed or something, and like 2,000 have been permitted. I mean, it's very slow. Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, Governor Newsom, they're feckless fools, and they have, they've obviously continued to destroy a great state, and there's a lot of people suffering in the Palisades still that are just giving up because they can't get their home rebuilt, and it's been a year since that happened. Well, because it was in California, and it was a big fire, very tragic fire. A lot of people, good folks, lost their homes. It's sad, very, very sad. If you don't know someone, you know someone that knows someone, you know a celebrity, you know somebody, just an average person. I know a few that know people and lost their homes in the Palisade fire. I think L.A. Marzulli, guest of the show, was lost his home, was in the fires out there a year ago, or it was damaged severely, had to evacuate. So it's been a year. And all the celebrities got out there and they had this big concert. Anybody remember the big concert? It was on television and it was January's. It was called the Fire Aid Benefit. And they raised $100 million plus of donations that was supposed to go directly to help victims of the Los Angeles fire. But the Oversight Committee has released a report and said that was BS. Representative Kevin Kiley of Rockland, California, who helped launch the investigation, claimed reports highlights where the funds were not used in the way that the donors would likely have wanted them to be used. You have examples of funds used for voter outreach efforts towards political advocacy groups. You had some of the donations went towards podcasters, fungus planting, and those examples are pretty troubling, says the congressman who's helped lead the investigation. I do want to be clear, there were many organizations that got funds, nonprofits that are very worthy nonprofits. He says, but however, there's a lot of money that went dispersed out to things. You're like, how did this help with the Palisade fire? So the accusation is, Fire Aid, you gave a little bit of the money, but the lion's share went off to some very strange causes. Fire Aid organizers deny the claims made in the report. They stood by their original promise that all the money raised during the concert would go to well-known vetted nonprofits serving the residents of Altadena, Pasadena, Pacific Palisades, and Malibu. The report is broken down into sections. They say $100,000 of Fire Aid donations went to promote voter participation. $550,000 went to groups involved in political advocacy. An unknown amount of money from Fire Aid donations went towards illegal aliens. So they're not sure where that went. $100,000 in Fire Aid donations was sent to podcasters. Producer Chad, did we get any of that? I know we had just started this Lakey Unleashed, but I don't think we got any of our Fire Aid money. I mean, I don't know what the qualifications were, but maybe had to open a Somalia daycare. We could do that and to get our fire aid money. That'd be good. Over $500,000 of the fire aid donations were used to pay salaries, bonuses, and consultants for other nonprofit organizations. Fire Aid is advertised that all donations raised during its benefit concert would go directly to victims of the California wildfires. Unfortunately, this was not the case. 55 instead, money went towards left-leaning pet projects. So interesting there that next time they're on the screen begging for money, you might want to say, let me just give directly to the nonprofit that I trust, rather than letting some fancy fire aid celebrity-driven cause out there. Was it the Palisade fire in which was it Orca Winfrey and somebody, they all went on television and said, please give now, and you're like, you give, you're the, yeah. Anyway, it's really sad what happened. I was watching last night a cut of what show I think she was on America's Newsroom, but Kennedy, if you remember her from MTV days, and now she's a commentator and co-host on the Fox News channel. Kennedy, she still doesn't have her house there a year later. And so many tens of thousands literally don't have homes there. And a lot of the aid that they were supposed to get from fire aid went the other way. All right, don't forget your question of the day is what was good or socially acceptable in the 1990s is no longer acceptable now. And smoking in the restaurants, that's a big one. That was a big one. All right, good to have all of you here. Everybody ready for the next portion of the program? Before we go to our next guest, I want to remind you that we're in the real estate selling season. You're like, Lakey, we just cleared the holiday season. You are correct. We just cleared the holiday season. But selling your house at the right time can actually leave tens of thousands of extra dollars in your pocket. No joke, my friends. As old Joe Biden would say, no joke. I'm serious. No joke. All you got to do is talk to Sherry Cree, talk to many realtors, and Sherry was top among them. They'll tell you that when you sell a home, when you list that home, if you list it in the seller's market, what you're going to get more money. If you list it in a buyer's market, the buyer's going to get the better deal. So which one do you want to be? Are you the buyer or are you the seller? If you want to sell a home, you probably need to list that home this spring earlier than you think. I would say ASAP. Get going, because there's a dearth of there's not as much inventory in the market. It becomes more of a seller's market. And talk to Sherry. She'll help you with the strategy, navigate your timing, your calendar, your school transfers, your moving dates, the repairs you have to get at your home, the new paint. She can help you coordinate all that and kind of get you a timeline, because it's all about the strategy. Sherry is the strategist that you need, because she believes you approach real estate in this paradigm, this lens, that guess what? This is the lens that, you ready? Pay attention. Real estate can help you and your family create generational wealth. And I know it's unaffordable in many states right now. The cost of housing in Colorado has gone up high. She loves talking to people that are first-time home buyers and say, here's a strategy. Here's some ways to do this. Here's some products you may not be aware of when it comes to mortgages and financing. So don't just assume that you're out of the game because you live in a state where it's high cost of living. There can be some strategy. If you're in Colorado, the I-25 corridor, I highly recommend you get in touch with her today. And again, it's all about the strategy. Put the plan in place and then follow through with the plan. And you got to make sure the plan. Wouldn't it be sad? You say, well, if you would have done this 2 months ago, you would have made 40,000 extra bucks on a home, or 100,000 extra, because people would have bid the price up. You want to be on that end of the transaction. If you're the seller, if you're the buyer, you want to be the other. You get the idea. Homeswithsherry.com, the I-25 corridor, Denver, Fort Collins, Loveland, Dacono, Boulder, Broomfield. You get the idea. Homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Make sure you mention my name when you reach out to her. All right, question of the day is things that were socially acceptable in the 90s that are not acceptable now. It was socially acceptable not owning a cell phone, says Jeff on the Facebook feed. In the it was the mid 90s before there were cell phones. I remember in the early 90s, I had a couple of friends that thought it was cool. They found a fake antenna that they'd stick on their window. So people thought we were college kids. They thought they had a cell phone. I remember the first bag phone. Anybody remember bag phones? Yeah. That was a big deal, the bag phones. And it looked like it was important too. You got a shoulder strap, walked into a restaurant. How you doing? That was fancy stuff. That was mid 90s. That was not early 90s. Ray's got a great one on the YouTube. Riding in the back of a pickup truck. Oh, how many of you did that? Anybody remember, and I remember that doing this, laying in the back window ledge of the car. Cars were big enough you could actually lay down there and you'd wave at the cars. I remember that my cousins had a station wagon of some sorts, a small one, not like one of the big boats that you could sail in. But I remember you'd sit in that back section that could be storage, similar to the end of it, back of an SUV, except the seats would fold down and you'd sit there. And man, in a good station wagon, you were like 50 yards from your parents. And you could do things back there. You could make signs at people in the cars, and your parents have to yell. It's like an airplane. They need a speaker. Those in the back of the station wagon, please behave yourself. Oh, those were good days. You couldn't do that. Now you got to be strapped down, buckled in, helmets on, and get in the car, and you're supposed to be in a car seat until you're 14 years old or something. Yeah, times have changed. It's just the 90s. Seems like a long time ago, but it seems like a short time ago. But looking back on some of these things, it was a long time ago. All right. Glad to have you here. Want to bring in my next guest of the program. He's been with us before, and I got to hit the screen. I always do this. We got to fix this. My producer, my producer, I was going to say producer Chad, we got to fix this. My computer's like at the end of my fingers, and I'm trying to get to it, but I'll get to it here in just a moment. Indeed. There we go. Sorry. I got the right button. I do have it. No, I know how to work your computer. I promise you I do. I promise you I do. Dr. Colonel Josh McConkey, he's a television guy, radio guy, podcast guy, print guy. He's been on the program many times before, and glad to have him here. Dr. McConkey, welcome into the program. I'm getting the right button, sir.
There we go. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
First of all, folks may have followed your podcast work, seen you on my program before, but you're a candidate for the, I believe, lieutenant governor in North Carolina. And I first of all talk about you. We got viewers and listeners that listen to the podcast, streamcast, broadcast throughout the day. Talk about North Carolina and Dr. Josh McConkey.
Yeah, no, we're bringing purpose-driven leadership here to North Carolina. Unfortunately, 2024 was pretty rough for us here in North Carolina. We lost the governor race as well as lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and the attorney general. So really difficult situation, but rising from the ashes and bringing some purpose-driven leadership. I was a prior Duke professor. I'm an emergency doctor, military commander, and Air Force Reserve colonel, doing a lot of national security stuff in DC right now. And then award-winning best-selling author. My first book was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. It's on leadership, being the weight behind the spear in your community. And we're going to bring that to the state of North Carolina.
Dr. Josh McConkey is my guest. Let's get into some news topics as well. We'll come back and revisit the book and your candidacy and how folks can contribute to that or buy the book, etc. But President Trump has said that the United States, and it was a controversial statement by many, is going to run the Venezuelan government for now. And Defense Secretary said, if you F around, you find out. They effed around with America. Give me your thoughts here on the actions against Maduro. Did we do the right thing, the wrong thing? You served your country. You were served in the Air Force. And give me your military perspective from the paradigm of your life.
So, certainly a lot of national security background. I've done the national security course at National Defense University and military commander and, 23 years of military service. I think people need to understand one thing. Venezuela has the number one reserves for oil, natural gas, and a ton of resources. Now, China, Russia, and Iran were right on our back doorstep. If you don't understand why that's a national security issue for us, then you're in the wrong business, whatever it is that you're doing. So that was completely untenable. President Trump for 6 months had gone the diplomatic route. He tried to open those discussions using the State Department. Maduro, not a nice guy, clearly done terrible things. You talk about the 3,000 people that he's murdered, from around the country, and then 8 million people that had left in a huge humanitarian crisis. It was a very bad situation. He tried the nice route, and unfortunately, they did FAFO, and it was an amazing operation, having done one night operation myself. I've done an air assault in Iraq in 2007. We can chat more about that. But, this was a big decision, but it was clearly a national security threat, and he addressed it.
Let me ask you, sometimes those of us who've grown up and talk about the 90s and things that were cool then that are now, you can go back to the 90s, our actions in Iraq under H.W. Bush, and then, of course, 20 years of war after September 11, 2001. Sometimes a lot of us kind of see these military operations and go, okay, that sounds good, but yeah, this is going to get us in a quagmire and involvement in a foreign entanglement for the next 20 years, then count me out. Do you fear that Venezuela is such a mess that we're going to end up being having to foot the bill for a long time? Is this something that an entanglement that's going to end pretty quickly and Venezuela get back on its feet?
So, they try to draw the parallels to Iraq and Afghanistan. Those were disasters. Those were always going to end up as failures, completely different situations, different cultures. When you want to look at something that's going to be a little bit more a fair comparison, look at Panama. So in 1990, with Manuel Noriega, we had a military operation. It was a full invasion, and he was removed. And look at Panama now, very stable. There's more Chinese involvement there in the Panama Canal region than we would like from a national security standpoint. But that's going to be kind of more along the lines what we hope to see in Venezuela. And being involved, they say, oh, how are we going to run the country? It's not as much us just running the country, but giving them that foundation, just stepping in and getting their oil refineries up and running. I think they're operating at literally less than 1% of their capability. He had to run it into the ground. And it's really because Iran, Russia, and China had just been taking advantage of them and just like stripping those resources, using them for training bases. There's Hezbollah training facilities there in Venezuela. So all kinds of national security issues. We want Venezuela strong. We need a strong security partner. And with the right guardrails and helping them build that back, whether that's having fair elections here in 6 months or a year or 2 or 3 years, I don't know how that timetable is going to work. But they need that framework and that structure. We can help them get to a place like where Panama is at now.
Dr. Josh McConkey is my guest. We'll talk about his book. We'll also talk about his candidacy for lieutenant governor. We'll get all that here in just a moment. But Dr. McConkey, you have 23 years of military service, senior command experience you've talked about, and a lot of your pertain directly to national security implications. And I have to ask you this question. Before Trump's second term, we were all distracted. First term, this happened, and then Trump's prosecution. And the world was still spinning, and our news media was focused on the Trump derangement syndrome and lock him up and all that stuff. Trump comes into office and he goes, "Hey, by the way, do you know the Chinese took over Panama, the canal? That we've got to get that back." He starts talking about Venezuela. He's also been talking about Greenland and says, "Hey, while we're all spinning around here fighting each other, you got the Chinese and the Russians up in the Arctic area and the shipping lanes around Greenland." These national security threats we weren't aware of. Should we have been aware of them? Was Joe Biden not aware of them? How did we have so many of these threats? Or is Donald Trump making it up and he's just looking for a war somewhere?
No, I can assure you we are 100% and we're 100% aware of them. Unfortunately, the previous administration just had some different ideas and got concerned about some different issues. And fortunately, we now have a president that is focused on America and our national security, which is the job of the president. If you can't do that, then I think that's a failure.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the book you mentioned, The Way Behind the Spear, and that was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. It's still a great book for folks to get. Talk about the book, and then we'll talk about your candidacy.
Yeah, so that's my personal leadership ethos, be the weight behind the spear. We're taking the best resource that we have in this country. It's people. So teachers, coaches, volunteers, and families, that's what sets us apart. When you look at what Russia and China really fear, it's our people. And so I want our people to get involved in their communities, whether it's coaching or volunteering in your church or your schools. But we have an entire generation of Americans here that unfortunately, we talk about that COVID generation. They were shut out of schools, churches, and their communities. And as an emergency doctor, I see anxiety, depression, a sky-high suicide rate. It's a huge mental health crisis. And as a military commander, I see those same kids now coming to the military. They lack resiliency skills. They're in the leadership, the inability to communicate. We need to pick this generation up. This book is my prescription to address that issue, to use that best resource, our people, to get out there and make a difference.
You're running for lieutenant governor. Those folks that don't live in North Carolina may not know the timetable, what that looks like, primaries, when's the election. Kind of walk us through the timeline, and if folks want to learn more, especially maybe they have friends in North Carolina, what do they learn?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, thank you. So this race is 2028. And right now we have Rachel Hunt, Josh Stein, and Roy Cooper. I call them the three amigos. So these are the people that during COVID shut down those businesses and churches and schools and just burned businesses to the ground. It was horrific. So Roy Cooper was the governor. He's now trying to get a promotion to U.S. Senate. And so for people that are watching out there, this is going to be the biggest Senate race in the country. This will determine who wins control of the Senate. So we need people to get behind Michael Whatley for sure. We have a primary coming up in March. There's some great candidates, Don Brown, Michael Whatley. There's still a lot to play out here in North Carolina for sure. But I think most people feel it's likely going to be Whatley coming through that primary. And then,
so the Senate race is this year, and your race is coming up in a couple of years.
2028. Yeah, mine's 2028.
Senate race now, though. We got to pay attention to North Carolina.
Oh, that's huge. It's going to be one of the biggest races in the country. And there's estimates that it may be a $1 billion race between the money spent on both sides. So it might be the first $1 billion Senate race in history. So that's going to be very big. And then for our governor, there's Josh Stein right now. Gosh, like him and Rachel Hunt or the governor and lieutenant governor, and just bad decisions, soft on crime policies. Everybody knows the Irina Zarutska case, the girl that was just coming home from working the pizza joint on a Friday night, was murdered on the bus on camera. I mean, these types of things will not fly here in North Carolina. And that's how we bring that purpose-driven leadership. So my campaign is all about security, safety, and service, those 3 S's. And with their help, if they want to go to strongernc.com, StrongerNC.com. We're stronger together. They can join the team. I need the help for sure.
StrongerNC.com is your campaign site. If you got a friend, a neighbor, relative, somebody that thinks right in their politics and has some practical common sense, go to send them over to the website, StrongerNC.com. That's an election that's coming their way. And pay attention to North Carolina. Tell your friends, hey, you live in whatever state. If your relatives live in North Carolina, tell them to pay attention to what's happening. It's a very pivotal elections coming up. Dr. Josh McConkey, it is a pleasure, sir, to have you. I wish you well, and folks can get a copy of your book, The Weight Behind the Spear. Amazon, look up your name. StrongerNC.com is your campaign site, and we'll talk again. Thank you, sir. Dr. Josh McConkey, our guest on the program. Lakey has been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio, and here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, we're moments away from the arrival of Jay Ratliff, our aviation and travel expert, where we slip away from the world of politics and we talk about aviation and travel around America, around the world. We'll talk airline news, so everybody stand by. Jay Ratliff should be arriving into the green room any moment. I think he's getting through the security check is what's happening right now, so everybody stand by with that. All right, let me hear this story of France. We love free speech in America. At least some of us do. Some people, they want you to be shut down or shot or imprisoned if you dare speak your mind. That's a bad thing. But the Gateway Pundit had the story earlier in the week that France, that's right, the French, they have, this is how it all begins, my friend. This is the fall of your country. 10 people were just found guilty in France for cyberbullying. And who were they cyberbullying, according to France 24 website? The country's first lady. They weren't threats. It wasn't violence. It wasn't blackmail. It wasn't speech. It was speech. It was ugly, stupid, conspiratorial in the writer's opinion, but it was aimed at Brigitte Macron, and it was claiming, as internet rumors have insisted, that Brigitte Macron is secretly a man. And that was what they were saying. And they were convicted and put in jail because they talked about this theory that's out there. And it's an interesting story from the Western Journal. The Gateway Pundit has it as well, that free societies don't criminalize speech because it's foolish or offensive. It can't be violent. You're not going to threaten, but if it's just foolish or offensive, suck it up, buttercup. You're grown kids. But to watch out, because 10 people convicted in France for cyberbullying because they had a conspiracy theory about Brigitte Macron. It's an interesting story, and yet it's also a frightening story for anybody who loves liberty, free speech, and to realize how our neighbors across the old pond, the French, might be not much of the lovers of freedom that they should be. Ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks since we've been together, Jay Ratliff, our aviation and travel expert. Thursday fell on a Christmas Day, and then it fell on New Year's Day, and now, as Peaches and Herb saying back in the 80s, reunited, and it feels so good. Jay Ratliff, Happy New Year.
And to you as well, my friend.
Well, first of all, we got to get through it. We cleared the travel season, the busy travel season, and for ultimate all intents and purpose, I didn't hear of any major meltdown. Southwest Airlines computers didn't crash this time. I mean, we got through kind of unscathed.
We did, and when we enter into the holiday season, especially December, which was like the 19th or 16th of December through this week. What we found was that we were worried about weather. Weather was okay. We were worried about all hands on deck as far as any airline shortage. We were good there. We were concerned about air traffic control. The FAA did a good job of traffic management, making sure we didn't have too many planes in one area, especially the busy, congested Northeast, which was good. They did a good job on their flow control. The TSA did a good job as far as making sure that the flow of passengers through the security checkpoint was good. So, yeah, I have to give high marks to everyone across the board because even though we did have some snippets of some bad weather, had some rash of cancellations, we also had issues in Europe. For the most part, it was a travel season where airlines were able to enjoy full airplanes. A lot of them were on time and a lot of revenue made for the airlines.
I had a quick trip this past weekend. I was flying back into Denver with my son, and we were excited. I mean, we were excited. We got back in time. He had an activity with some friends that were back from college, and got back to Denver. We're like, hey, we're 25, 30 minutes early, and we got the tailwind, and boom, we come in early. And I said, Denver is the only airport I think I could arrive at 30 minutes early and still get to the gate 25 minutes late. The gates were full. It was like, how do we not plan for this?
Well, here's the thing. Airlines, when you're making reservations for an airplane, let's say it seats 165 people. They don't make 165 reservations. They'll make 175, 180 or more, depending on the historical data showing how many people on a Saturday show up when it's full, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and they'll overbook the flight. Sometimes you have more people show up than seats, and you provide compensation. Gates a lot of time are the same way, where an airline may have at a specific airport 15 gates. And if every single flight comes in on time, they're going to have 16 aircraft there.
Yeah.
So they actually overbook that because they know historically a couple of flights are going to be running late, so we can bring them in, bring them out. So when you have an airplane like yours that comes in early, everything is full. You're in essence waiting for something to open up before you can come in. And that's one of the reasons anytime I fly, right before the seatbelt sign comes on, I'm heading for the lavatory, because if I need to use the restroom, I'm going to do it. Because the whole point is that you might get on the ground and get into an extended taxi time. And all these people say, well, I'll wait till I get to the airport to take care of my business. Well, it may take you a while to get there. And I've seen time after time where there's either a lack of staffing or a lack of available gates, where you have these issues where, yes, you get there early, but it's almost too early because you created an operational bottleneck.
Yeah. Our pilot, we waited so long at the tarmac, we parked. He said, I'm turning off the seatbelt sign, but be ready when we're ready to go. So people could do their business.
That was a good captain.
Yeah. Real quick, we remember the story about Boeing where the plane door blew open and horrified us on an Alaska Airlines flight. Interesting. You sent me the story. You figure pain and trauma in the back, but there's a lawsuit, but the pilot's actually suing Boeing.
Yeah, this is, what happened? That was 2 years ago, Monday. It's been 2 years ago since that Alaska Airlines door plug fell off, blew off, whatever you want to call it. And as the crew took off, they had that situation at 16,000 feet. They didn't know if it was an explosion or whatever. They knew something drastic had happened. They turned that airplane around and landed. And the explosive decompression was so intense, so severe, that it actually blew the locked cockpit door open. All the papers, everything went flying in the cockpit. I mean, it was absolute chaos. Crew did an unbelievably great job of getting that aircraft on the ground. No serious injuries, no fatalities. And it was shortly thereafter that Boeing kind of alluded without saying it could have been crew error, which is the most ridiculous, asinine thing I can think of. But that's Boeing being Boeing, the big CYA at work here, which was amazing because when the all-star team of the National Transportation Safety Board, and that's what they are, came in and did their usual thorough investigation, they went to Boeing and said, oh, good. You have records that show who put that door in, who the supervisor was, and we have video as well that we can call upon. Give us that to help our investigation. This is after Boeing alluded to it might be the crew's fault. Boeing couldn't find any of that. The video was nowhere to be seen. And, I don't know what we did with the training records. So Boeing, who's accusing other people, is intentionally or not, accidentally or not, we don't know, but they were unable to provide the information. The captain has decided, because you have a 2-year window when you're going to be bringing forth a lawsuit before the statute of limitations, and before the 2-year anniversary, he's suing Boeing for $10 million, saying that, yes, there was a lot of undue stress, but added to that was this absolute unbelievable notion that the crew might have done something wrong. I don't know. Maybe Alaska Airlines crews are responsible for putting bolts and nuts on doors. I don't know. Probably not. So it was just absolutely ridiculous. That crew did a great, great job. And remember, that was a full airplane, and not a person was sitting in that specific window seat. Wow. Now, I know if you're like me, right before a plane leaves, a lot of people are like, man, get me out of this middle seat. Hey, there's a window seat over there. I'll go sit by that. No one was sitting next to that door when it blew out. Thank God for that. What a miracle, because they would have gone right out the door. That explosive decompression that I mentioned was so severe it threw open the cockpit. I mean, it ripped a shirt off of a poor teenager that was near the door. It was incredible. And the fact that we didn't lose anybody was absolutely amazing.
We talked about the good pilot that turned off the seatbelt sign at my flight on Sunday. This pilot, unbelievable job. However, there's another story you sent me, Jay, and we'll get to it real quick. And it's a story of Air India. This pilot, not so good. He's a naughty boy.
Yeah, this was in Vancouver. You had an Air India crew going from Vancouver. I think they were flying back to Delhi. And as the crew's going through the security, security lines, not what they had to go through, there was an airport employee that noticed one of the pilots was acting a little bit off. And what they're trained to do is if they see something, you don't say, oh, that guy's drunk, this one's this. This person appears to be under the influence of something. And they had to find out if that was the case. Sometimes it's pain medication. It could be anything. So they pulled the captain off to the side, did a breathalyzer test. He failed. I think they administered it twice, and they had to replace the crew. And a lot of times when these happen, well, most all the time, they become a front burner story. Everybody's talking about it. Jay, oh my gosh, is it even safe to fly anymore? And I'm thinking, look, there's 400,000 pilots around the world. When one of these things happen a couple of times a year, it's going to make the headlines. Let's recognize that's not very many. So I'm not too worried about it. And what I really like is normally each time one of these situations is caught, it's somebody at the airport that was paying attention. Somebody at the airport that said something. Thank God for those individuals who made sure that impaired individual wasn't able to access the aircraft. Mechanics, pilots, and others, they have depending on the airline, a very established, well-known policy that's called bottle to throttle. You cannot have any alcohol whatsoever within sometimes 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours of the time you report to duty. Everyone knows what that is. And I've been playing golf with pilots and mechanics that the cart comes around, they're going to get something to drink, and they look at their watch to see if they're within that window. Because if not, they know I can't have anything. Because in the event that there's an accident or near accident, one of the things that'll happen is you'll have the air traffic controller that'll be tested for any sort of substance, the pilots as well. And you've just got to be extra careful. So the idea that somebody would allow that to sideline their career is really just a sad situation, but it just goes to show, regardless of the profession, people still battle those types of addictions.
Aviation travel expert Jay Ratliff. Jay, it's starting to spit a little snow and drizzle here in the Colorado Front Range. I haven't heard of any delays at our airport. What's it like to move about the country today?
Had some issues in Denver this morning. It's improved as the day progresses. A lot of this bad weather's headed to Chicago. Those airports will be impacted by later today. Other than that, across the country, should be a pretty good day to fly.
Jay Ratliff, I appreciate you. Happy New Year. Kept you a little long. I appreciate you. Get back to day trading. Go to jratliff.com and you will see Prolific day trading information. He teaches classes on that. jratliff.com, jratliff.com, RATLIFF, jratliff.com, and be sure to let him know that you listen to the show. If you ever have an aviation question, he doesn't mind you firing him an email there, and then we can come back and talk to you directly on the show about that. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, Thursday, the 8th day of January, year of our Lord 2026. Wrapping it up is what we're doing. And wrapping it up there. A couple of final comments I want to read through that I might have missed on the. This one made me laugh. Sorry, it's sophomoric humor, but I think it's funny. This came off the YouTube channel talking about Brigitte Macron being cyberbullied, and 10 people that spread the theory that she might be not a woman. I saw that Steve wrote this on the YouTube. So they said she may have a wiener, and she got butt hurt and jailed them. That means her husband was butt hurt too. I'm not sure the whole story there. I just thought that was kind of funny. Ray says on YouTube, thank God Big Mike and Barack don't have us arrested and sent to prison. Yeah, there is that. I mean, it's really scary that their allies, France is, again, these weren't threats. These were just like, hey, that might be dude looks like a lady. Lady looks, it's a song, but they got put in jail for it. Jeff says on the Twitter or the X thing, how long do we have to say that? I still like to call it Twitter. So do I have to say Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, or can I just call it Twitter and be done with it? I like calling it Twitter. Anyway, Jeff says, thankful that it seems like the stereotype of drunk pilot has gone by the wayside like a disgruntled postal worker. I didn't know there was ever a stereotype of drunk pilots. I do remember the phrase going postal. That was something that happened a lot in the 80s and 90s. People do that. That's a bad thing. All right. Good to have you here on the program. If you're going to protest ICE, don't park your car in the middle of the street. Stop if you're at a traffic stop in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I don't care if you got a MAGA sticker. If the cops say stop, and that's a good thing to do. That's my advice for the day. That's my advice for all of you today. That when given an order by law enforcement, please obey it, because tragic situation there. And that's what I'd like to say. All right. Good to have you here. Don't forget, we'll be back here tomorrow morning. Got to talk tomorrow. I've got to get this on I haven't got to it yet. You heard about Biden's big pension. He's getting a big pension, bigger than any other president in U.S. history. We'll talk about that. We did the socially acceptable in the 90s. We won't do that. But I'm also going to talk about predictions, things that you thought that would be in place today that aren't. I mean, a lot of us thought we would have like jetpacks. Not happening. That was our vision. So what were the things that you thought back in the 80s and 90s that would be around in the year 2025, 2026 that are not? Yeah. I thought I was always speaking things I thought back then. I always thought I was going to need the stop, drop, and roll thing. Yeah, now you practice that, right? Now, I always thought quicksand was you grew up in the 80s and 90s. Quicksand was going to be a much bigger problem. I thought for sure quicksand was going to be a big deal because we learned how to not get stuck in quicksand. And I thought quicksand would be a much bigger deal than it is. And it's not a big deal at all. At least in my neighborhood, we don't have a lot of quicksand. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to be a part of the program or one of our sponsors nationwide, feel free to send us a message. info@jimmylakey.com. info@jimmylakey.com. I'll say it again because I can't. info@jimmylakey.com. The Lakey Unleashed Roadshow tour starts off in 2 weeks. I'd love to have you be part of that as well. Email us, info@jimmylakey.com. I mean this. We got to hold on. We got to do the stolen memes section of the show. How the heck did we miss that? I almost missed it. My bad. I knew some of you were going to curse at me. You ready? I apologize. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we steal memes, intellectual thievery. I apologize. You ready? There we go. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. Thanks for the reminder, producer Chad. Reading cooking instructions off the bag I just threw out. Everybody do that? Is he wearing his boxer underwear in the kitchen? If you're cooking for anybody other than yourself, don't wear your underoos to cook in. That's my advice. I think it's sanitary. It's just, if you're cooking for yourself, I don't care. Just don't fry bacon naked. I advise against that. But if you're cooking for someone else, put some pants on, for God's sake. Round and around the globe we go. That's social commentary going on. Tim Waltz thought summoning the National Guard to take on Trump and ICE. There's the National Guard. There they are. Some of those people are YouTube as well. They're YouTubers, producer Chad. Ooh, that's a motley crew. That cap should also be captioned, "Tell me you're a bat crap crazy liberal without saying you're a bat crap crazy liberal." Round and round the globe we go while we steal the means, where we steal the means from no one know. Liberals should be more like Europe. RFK Jr. and Trump say, okay, let's recommend 11 childhood vaccinations instead of 72, just like Europe. Not like that. They want to be like Europe, where they arrest people that talk bad. That's the Europe they want. Yeah. By the way, I like those recommendations about RFK. I think it's much more right. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. Democrats, you can't go illegally arrest a president. You can't do that. Also, Democrats, give them a mugshot. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. White House has announced over 1 million new jobs were created in December, but they were all filled by Marco Rubio. Yeah, I asked this yesterday. How many jobs does Marco Rubio have now? He's got a heck of a lot. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. We're out of memes. I almost forget the memes. But producer Chad, Johnny on the spot, said, "Hey, Lakey, get the memes in there." And then people yell and they send emails, "Where were the memes? Where were the memes? Where were the memes?" You give a whole bunch of great show, and everybody just sticks around for the memes. All right, now can we start the music? Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow morning, good Lord willing, the creek here for more Lakey Unleashed. Listen on the podcast. Go like us, subscribe to us, Spotify, iHeart, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. You can listen to this show in its entirety. And if you don't like looking at this global face, you just get to hear the voice. That's the beauty of podcasting. It's always a great backup if you miss the live stream. God bless you. God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey, a.k.a. Jaime Lagos. Peace. I'm out of here.